You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona. With me always, my good friends.
Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike in Texas in Arizona.
Yeah, well, welcome to Arizona. If you're on our YouTube channel, you can see that Arizona Mike, or AK Mike, is visiting AZ Mike. So we had a special week that I just happened to be off work, as you can probably see from the scruffiness that Mike and I both have. And anyway, he came out to the house and wanted to visit the new shop and build on some planes. And so we've been able to go fly. And anyway,
Here we are.
We're glad that he's here. Just missing Jay, but Jay's preparing for a big shindig for the 4th of July coming around the corner down in Texas. Yeah. You got some folks coming in.
Yeah, I wasn't invited, so that's why I came to.
Yeah, well, there you go. See, we weren't invited.
Yeah. Like, forget it.
Well, you guys were going to get together. Mike was going to use his refund ticket for not making it out in February. So
that's true. So this is his February visit that should have happened in February,
right.
But
There
because of the snowstorm, it didn't happen. So,
and you almost didn't make it, right? You got in like super late.
Yeah, there was a couple of delays because of storms.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was supposed to be in at like 9 p.m. and he wound up coming in around 10:30 or something.
Yeah.
So matter of fact, I was on the phone with Jay going around and around in circles. So it was pretty funny. Well, the good news is with Mike here, we were able to go fly, but you, my friend, were able to go fly as well.
Yes. I got out with Jim again and we went out flying, and I have to say it was happy days. In fact, the past 2 times we've gone out have been actually fantastic. A couple episodes ago, I think I told you guys a story with the whole crosswind stuff, and Jim just had a terrible time, and pretty much all of his planes came back in some sort of disrepair. And the next time we went out, took them all out. We remade the planes again. Everything flew great. And one of the things that I think that helped with the success was Jim. I guess I did enough browbeating on everybody, on Jim especially. Jim was flying with older Futaba radio, and a lot of times we get out there and Jim would be, he'd be trying to switch the modules in the back, and he'd go between planes and he's switching, different frequencies and different radio brands. And last year he went ahead and bought himself I think it was a Radio Master 16S radio, brand spanking new, top of the line. It's uses OpenTX, kind of a Taranis style radio, but way modernized. Has a touch screen. It does all this stuff. It was slick. And every time we get out and he's fumbling with his older Futaba, I'd be like, "Hey Jim, why don't you just program that in your new Radio Master, and you don't have to keep switching the modules. It just does it automatically with its internal system." And he's like, "Yeah, I should start putting radio models on that thing." And every time he'd come out and he'd be fuddling with his Futaba, I'd give him some smart remark about using his new radio. Well, he finally took me up on it, and he dove in and actually programmed in about 3 or 4 models and came back out to that field last week or so, and we went out and flew. Great success. Everything flew. I got everything trimmed out. Things are working fantastic. No problems. And we just went out again to fly again. And then we kind of ran into some problems, but nothing major. It's just that the good news is, like I said, the firmware that the radio, the Taranis or these style of radios use is OpenTX. Well, AK Mike knows because he has a Taranis system, but they haven't updated that system in like 2 years. So if you think about your Spectrum, you go a couple of months and then you check online and you go, "Oh man, I should update my firmware," right? and then you got some new option, or they worked out some bug or something. Well, the OpenTX just stopped putting out updates. And not to say that that's terribly bad. I mean, the software seems to work. Doesn't really have major problems or anything. So, it's very mature for what it does. But there was no updates coming out. And so basically people wanted, who have these newer radios, they weren't really being represented in that OpenTX software. So I guess some really smart guys got together and they went ahead and talked to the creators of OpenTX and said, hey, do you mind if we fork this off from OpenTX and we get a new software that deals with these newer radios and stuff that we want to put in? And of course, the guys that were there were like, yeah, okay, if that's what you want to do, just call it something else. And lo and behold, you get Edge TX, or Edge TX. Instead of OpenTX, it's Edge TX. And so it has the latest and greatest stuff. And the nice part about it, like I said on Jim's Radio Master, it has a touch screen. It has all this cool stuff. But on OpenTX, that it doesn't work. It's a color screen and everything. That stuff doesn't really work at all. And now on this new firmware, boy, it works lickety split, and you can have like all these different tabs that you can just press and look at different information. I think they call them widgets, or widgets. Yeah. And so they open up to give you all sorts of different information, from telemetry to model specs to radio freaks to whatever you want to put in there. You can set it up for however you like. It's really pretty slick. So I've been, Jim actually talked me into updating my firmware. So I updated it on my old Tyrannus here. And although my Tyrannus is slightly older than his, it's not obsolete or anything, but it has a black and white screen. So I don't get all the cool touch screen stuff or any of that. Right. But the nice part about switching over from OpenTX to, this Edge TX is that all the little nuances that they're correcting and for, things that are bugs or new software or basically for new hardware for things that are coming out or whatever, that have been ultra slow on OpenTX. Well, now with this Edge TX, they're just popping out new stuff for it, and new things and automated stuff. It's quite, nice. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
So all of that said and done, and you guys are having this great deal. Jim, I think, wants to fly his Panther, right? The EDF.
Yes.
You have a Tyrannus radio, and he now has a Tyrannus radio. They can talk to one another via, like, Buddy Box. So that's the next logical step.
Two ways they can talk. You can do it wired, or you can do it wireless.
Okay. So
it's just like the Spectrum.
Gotcha. All right. And then from what I understand, you guys tried that.
We did. And I'm not going to say it was a smoking failure, but it turns out that let me put it this way. OpenTX, the firmware, and when you're playing and adjusting things, sometimes you got very lost, because you have to think like the guys who programmed it. So if you're not quite into the way they think and do things and the way they want to operate their firmware, it was real easy to get lost. So the nice part about the Edge software, it makes sense to common people. If you look at it, you go, oh, okay, I remember that to do this thing, it was really complicated on OpenTX, but on the Edge, Edge TX, you go, oh, okay, I get it. I have to change this. I have to change that. Oh, that makes sense. Well, for Jim, as he was setting stuff up, something was off. So basically everything worked, right? I could control the Panther if I was on the Slave, but the problem was my rudder was controlling my ailerons, right? So if I said that wrong. If I wanted to use my ailerons, right? If I use my aileron stick, nothing happened. If I just started moving all the sticks, if I move my rudder stick, that moved the ailerons. And we're like, oh, well, we just have to switch them, or something got, that's where Transmorgify. That's where it was from that, doing that stuff. But anyway, sorry about that, folks. It was an inside joke with the guys here. But anyway, so basically it was misconfigured in the master radio. Something had been misplaced, or something was ticked on, and we had to kind of figure that out. And, we kind of spent our whole morning instead of flying, dealing with that. But, he went home, I went home. I was making phone calls, digging through YouTube, and Jim finally figured it out. And so he's got it all figured out and ready to go for next time. So we hashed out that problem.
What was the story?
Okay, so they have a screen that's set up for a trainer screen, and on that trainer screen, they list out the controls that you're going to be using. Right, you got your throttle, aileron, rudder, etc. And so, even though it looks, the numbers may correspond with like with his system, I think it's what throttle first is number 1, ailerons number 2, elevators 3, and rudders 4, right? And so that was those numbers corresponded with the the lettering of what we had there. Well, so remember, like if you were setting up a delta wing on the Spectrum,
Right.
and then you're like, okay, I got it set up for delta. It says I should plug this port into this one, and I should plug this into that. When you plug it in, and it would be wrong.
Yes.
And you're like, the delta, that didn't work out right. And so then you go to reverse it, and then it was doing all sorts of
Weird things,
wonky things. And then it was like, okay, I got the things backwards, or I had my servos back. Yeah, well, you just keep working on it until you get it right. Sometimes you get it right off the bat, sometimes you don't. You might have to reverse one or two things. That's kind of how this was. That list that said, each radio has its own mapping, of the radio, of how things are supposed to work. Well, even though like I said, his brand is a Radio Master, and then he was using the slave was a Taranis, so they were both on different maps.
Oh,
and so therefore, when they went to talk to each other,
right,
everything lined up and was talking except for the aileron. The aileron would say, "Hey, I'm here," and then would pop out on his radio as the rudder. So basically, we had to go into that trainer page, move things around until we could get it to work right. Basically, it's kind of a trial and error. And most of the guys that said, "Well, we don't know exactly why it does that, but you just have to get in there, whatever, start trading around that one that doesn't work until it'll work." You have 3 chances to get it right. So I wish I had a more scientific explanation, but it was just one of those, keep working until it pops out. And I'm sure somebody's going to write up or figure that out later on, because the software is a little new,
You'll see what it is. I mean, you'll be able to look at it now that you've set it up and it's right. You'll be able to go, oh, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right? It should be logical, I would think.
Yep.
So were you doing this wirelessly or wired?
No, it was wired.
So there was an actual cable going between the 2 boxes.
Yes.
And why did you choose
it would be the same problem with the wireless.
Yeah, but why did you choose to do it wired instead of wirelessly?
We needed another transmitter, meaning not a transmitter as a radio. Okay, so his 16, the Radio Master 16S or whatever, it has an internal not receiver, but transmitter inside of it, right? And that does all the different brands of radios. Well, when you do the wireless thing, it needs an external hookup as well. So if you have an external box to do something, you hook that in, and then that will talk to the slave if you're going to do it wirelessly. Or you can get a dongle, which Jim got a dongle for later on. It didn't come yet, so that would have been the easier solution.
Right.
So I was supposed to bring the extra transmitter module, but of course I was kicking it all around the room in here. And then, Jim's like, "Hey, just bring yours out." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll bring it out."
Yeah, no,
where the heck did it go? I couldn't find it.
Tumbleweeds.
So I called him up before it came out and said, "Bring your wire, bring your cable, man. I can't find it."
And then when you got home, it was sitting right on your desk?
Yeah, of course, I tripped over it, sprained my ankle.
So, all right. So now I guess Jim figured out the problem then, and now he's ready. You guys are ready to go back out and kind of do your thing, right?
We're ready to go back out and try it again. So we have to cut the field, and he volunteered to do that for actually the next day. We're waiting for some rain to come out and wet the field down. so it won't be a dust storm.
Speaking of rain, kind of off topic, but we were just sitting out on the back porch, and Mike got rained on here in Arizona. So it's very
figure.
rare, very
Okay.
rare. But the very cool thing was that it was kind of like really high clouds. It didn't really look like rain, and then it started raining, and this perfect rainbow came over from one side to the other. So
I was going to say, was it a double rainbow?
Was it?
Double
it was a
rainbow.
double rainbow, but it
Yeah.
was a full rainbow. Which this is the second one we've seen this week, so that's kind of neat. It's just summertime here in Arizona.
Wow.
So. Well, so that was frustrating because you were out there for a while, and then you kind of went home, and you really didn't get to fly much.
No, we didn't, but we're still, like you said, we're still learning the radio.
Sure.
The nice thing is, I'm so I'm so happy that my badgering is paid off, because and I can understand why Jim
Public
was
humiliation
hesitant
on our
to do.
podcast is paid off. Is that what you're saying, Jim? We apologize.
Hey,
for
negative
today's
reinforcement sometimes works. Yeah.
performance.
We're not him.
We aren't. We
Jim.
support you, Jim.
Call us if you need help.
Well, I am so proud that he made the switch,
Yeah.
because I can understand it, because once again, he found the Edge software. He was the one
That's
that
impressive,
let me know
yeah,
about it,
yeah.
because I didn't even know
Right.
about it. And I understand why he was hesitant to work with the OpenTX software, because either you get it or you don't.
Right.
And how that stuff works. And even I have one of the radios with Open it, and I was very hesitant, and I only have a few things on that particular radio. But now that I've worked with the Edge, I'm going to put more stuff on there because it's easier to do.
Yeah, it ain't a show.
And it makes a lot more sense.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm so happy for Jim. And the nice part about it is, we had to swap. He would normally swap between his two transmitter modules. And it was so nice because he didn't have to do that. And the third thing that's going to be great, whenever we would do it before with his older radios and, with Buddy Box, well, then we had to get out the cables, then we had to plug in the thing, and then we take the modules out, and then of course we'd go to fly and things weren't working at first, and it would be like, oh, I have to put the radio into trainer mode in order to go fly. And he'd be over there fiddling with it and pressing buttons and doing a little dance, and and then he'd get it to work, and it would work. Where now that he's figured out the problem, now you just pick up the radio and everything's going to work. Right. There's no more fiddling with pulling things out or making sure you put things in, because once he puts it in the radio and it's global, which is a term that they use for throughout the radio for all your models after that, you'll have a training switch, or you'll have a training setup, so you don't have to do anything. So it's really nice.
And this one talks to you as well, right?
Oh yeah, it talks to you. Not only, like I said, you can play games on it.
Yeah,
that's why you want to play with games on your transmitter.
While you're flying,
you can play games on the thing.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. You can have it. Yeah. It's real easy to set up for voice, so you can have your own voice on it if you want to. You can, like I said, the pictures, like for the models for the planes. So I found there's a website that has over 4,000 models on it. So the nice part is you go to the website, you have some abstract model, and somebody's already uploaded a picture, all the details, data, and you can just download that right into the radio. And the next thing that I really like is doing the firmware. Like I said, on the old Tyrannus, to get the newer firmware on there, you had to take out the SD card, put it in a reader, put it in your computer, do your once again do your dance, do the thing, upload the stuff. Hopefully your bootloader would work, and it just was not a terrible problem, but it was a bit of a goat rope. Now, I went ahead and did it on my radio with this new system, and there's like three or four different ways you can do it. The way that I just described, with just using the SD card, you can use. They have this Edge TX firmware loader. You could use that. That's kind of standalone. And the way I ended up doing it was they have a separate standalone online, version that you just, bring it up in your, save it to your web page, bring up the web page, put in your USB plug in the back, tell it you want, to check your radio, see if you have the, the latest and greatest firmware, checks for you, loads it up for you. Then it tells you, hey, these are the things that you need to add to your SD card, like new voices, new this, new that. It's slick. So I was like, "Woo, I like
Yeah.
that." So
Well, we're excited to see the next time you guys go out what how it feels and what's the new deal. And
I mean, if we're ever invited there,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, you
Ever
never know.
go?
well, you know me, it's just best to come.
That's true.
It's hard for me to say no
That's
once you're
true.
Oh,
there.
If
You've
I
been
pull up
invited.
in the driveway of my rig, he can't kick me out.
he
I could just
can,
stay
but
in
he
the front
wouldn't.
yard.
No, I
No, I
can't.
could just park in the front
Oh,
yard.
I can't even
see.
get
Yeah,
out of
you
my
got the
yard.
RV. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the good news is it sounds like you guys had at least a productive day, although albeit that you weren't flying. And the we were having this conversation after Jay was driving back, and Jay was kind of giving us a heads up of what we were going to talk about on the podcast. And he basically said that Jim's radio, he was transmorgifying all of the um, you know, details of his radio, and we all started laughing because I started laughing, and I'm like, "What are you just making up words?" And Jay said, "Yeah, it's a made up word." And AK Mike is like, "No, actually, it's not. It's a Scrabble word, and it does exist." So he pulled it up on his phone, and anyway, that's how the Transmorgify. We thought Jay was just throwing out some word that just came to jumbled up in his mind,
He
but
has been known to do that. I
and
mean,
he has
that's
been
not,
known
yeah,
to.
it's not
Like
odd.
Yeah,
Yeah,
escape.
yeah,
escape,
the
exactly.
escape, that's it.
But
So,
Transmorgify does not fit in that
it
category.
didn't,
No.
and so we were very, very impressed.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so our episode is, Transmorgify, which brings us to our, second, half of the podcast is that, AK Mike got to, go to the field. We went out to Sun Valley Flyers, and, we got, we kinda went out there, we got up, and he's like, "Hey, man, it's a nice day, let's go, and, let's get out there before the winds really kick up." And so, we threw a couple airplanes. I think we took the
L-39.
L-39, and then we took the, Funracer,
We did.
and we took the new 3D hobby shot 3D, Aero Ventures one that we got at the,
Oh,
uh-huh.
you did. Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
so, anyway, long story short, we went out there and, kinda broke in the, L39. You can see it sitting right back there if you're on our YouTube channel, and if you're not, go to youtube.com and, type in Park Flyer Podcast, and you kinda give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But, the blue L39 had a, gear door 'cause, it got kinda dinged up last time we were flying it, and, so I replaced the gear door, replaced the, main gear doors, did some, other modifications to it, and, 'cause remember I crashed it up at the, electric festival, and this is the first time I got
Festival,
it,
yeah.
first time I get back to it. So, anyway, well, let Mike kinda pick it up from there and tell us, what he thought about flying it 'cause, I went out and test flew it, made sure it was all ready to go, and then I put another battery in, hand the throttle over to Mike.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've flown.
Well, just 1 minute.
Yeah. So I put that thing in the air, and it made me instantly nervous. It flies pretty fast, and it was the first plane I've flown all day as well. So good news is it's got a really awesome control board in there. It keeps that thing nice and level. But right out of the gate, it got away from me in terms of like visually. I didn't know where it was, and it was a little. No, it was a little far out there, and that is a pretty common thing for me to do. But in this case, the wind was blowing pretty good, and I was banking left, and then when I looked up, it's like, what happened? It's like I was banking left. Why did it changed? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And so I was a little bit nervous about it. He goes, well, you know what you just put in? It's like, yeah, I just put in a bank left command, and it isn't doing that anymore. And so I was kind of like, you know, somewhat panicked, I
Right.
guess. I mean, he just fixed it, and um, it's a little bit more plane than I normally fly. So so we so I was flying it around, and I was flying a little far away. He's like, "Yeah, bring it in," which is pretty standard for Mike to say that to me because I tend to fly my planes a little far out,
This is
which doesn't
true.
make sense, right? But we were talking about that. It's like, well, why is it so far out? Well, one, it's fast. So if you turn nice and easy, it's 6 miles away before you get turned around
Right,
all the way.
right.
So that's an issue.
Plus, this left hand doesn't have to be all the way up. You can bring it
Oh
right
no,
No,
back
it was
to
half
I was
throttle.
half throttle.
It was half throttle.
I'm
Well,
just
but still,
kidding,
it's still getting away from me because it's a fast plane. And so we spent I don't know, must have been 6 or 8 batteries, uh, learning how to bring that tighter to us. Make it tighter turns. using rudder to make the turn tighter as well, and also so that the nose isn't pointing straight up into the sky as I'm turning, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was just a matter of, doing that. I think by the last time, I never landed it because it was just so gusty and windy. Even Mike, as good as Mike's a flyer, the wind was just really challenging him every time he tried to bring it to the ground. I think there was 2 greasers that he was able to do, and it's only because the moment he got to the runway, the gusts stopped long enough for him to put it down, and then after he put it down, it would get blown over, and he'd have to aileron into the wind just to keep the thing from falling over.
Yeah.
So I mean, I never landed the thing. I think if I had a few more batteries, I probably would have been more comfortable with that. But I did try to bring it down for a landing one time. I had the gear down. I was bringing it down, but I came in way too fast, way too high, and so it was going to get down on the tarmac until last quarter of the runway. There's just no way you're keeping that on the runway. So I went around and gave it to Mike because of course it's 3 minutes battery. So if you miss your landing, yeah, that's a problem. So Mike grabbed it and he's like, he juiced it to get as much height as he could get, so he could come around, just so he could bring it around. And he actually got that back on the ground without any trouble. But yeah, so overall, it was a lot of fun to fly. I don't even think I flew the fundraiser. I think
we were having issues.
Trouble. Yeah. That thing was the motor was doing something funny whenever he tried to gas it, so it wouldn't properly work.
Yeah, it the L39 we had probably 10 batteries or so. I charged them all up, and so I flew the first one, maybe 2, just to kind of get it all leveled out. The wind was incredibly gusty. Matter of fact, Mike, first time. Actually, is it the first time you've been out there with the turbines or no?
What do you mean? I've seen turbines fly there before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but almost everybody had turbines out there this weekend.
That's true. They're all heavy planes.
Yeah,
basically.
They're all big. These were the big guys. Like my L39 that I got on the table over there. One of the guys that owns a similar one, he's got that out there, and so he was flying it, and he's flying it with a 190. So that thing is just hauling the mail.
Right.
And it sounds really good. Looks really good. I think
Tony
was out there with his T45.
Mm-hmm. I don't know the blue
Gary
one at the
had
end.
the T45.
Who was the other dude at the end? The last
Craig had the Rebel out there. So
that's a nice looking plane too.
Yeah, and then I think Mike showed up with his Panther, but I don't know if he ever flew it, or Cougar. He has a Cougar. He didn't fly it. But yeah, we had really gusty conditions. It was almost across the runway, and Gary almost. Oh my gosh, we were impressed with him because he came in for a landing, and it just got a hopper where it just he was coming in a flare, and all of a sudden the airplane just whoop, went skyward in this huge gust, and it came over the fence where everybody was standing, and he was already into the power, thank goodness. And I saw the nose push over, which is what I was screaming, nose over, push over, and he threw the nose over and accelerated and then got out of it. And but we lucked out that it didn't come flying into the pits. But for us flying a really lightweight airplane, because these airplanes are huge, it wound up being a little gusty. So, but I think Mike's landings would have, had the wind been a little less crosswindish and more down the runway.
I'd have been fine.
I think he would have been fine.
I agree with that. Yeah, just managing all the gustiness.
But it was. I mean, I literally was cross controlling. Wing down and rudder, and Mike's like, "Dude, you're coming in like at this huge crab angle, and then just whipping it out at the last second.
Yeah,
dropping the wing into the wind and just kind of plopping it on." And the first time I came in was with full flaps, and it just did not want to do that in the wind. So the ones he's talking about where I greased them on were actually no flap landings.
Yeah. I mean, that was the first time I've ever. I mean, I've seen dust devils before, but that was the first time that I had to manage planes on the tables. Mm-hmm. Mike was flying, and we both saw the dust devil. And we were like, "Dust devil!" We yelled out, and I ran over to where the guards were going to get hit first. I went over to and I would put my hands on the planes, and I closed my eyes and just shut my mouth as that thing just came whipping through. It would have put everything on the ground easy as heck.
Yeah, so having said all that, I know we're out of time. We got to go, but there were a couple of really cool things that happened, and we'll talk about them on the next episode. But we did not get to fly the 3D Aero Ventures
We
because
did
it just was too gusty, and I just didn't want to.
Yes, not on a regular
No,
flight.
and it was just too out of control.
I mean, I was willing to do it, but he just said
He
no.
was, and we did fly the fundraiser. We did fly the fundraiser, and we can talk about that on our next episode.
I just took Jay's stance. I mean, it's not my plane, so I'm willing to fly it.
Yeah,
So
he was willing to
okay.
fly it. But anyway, we're going to leave you tonight. Join us in 2 weeks for the remainder of our day. But for now, I'm Michael from Arizona.
And I'm Jay from the hills of
And
Texas.
I'm AK Mike in Texas, in Arizona.
And visiting Arizona. All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Let's fly.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.